Hello everyone, it's Simmuz here. Welcome to a brand new video in The Sims 4, and today we are talking about data. So if you don't know me, if you don't know this channel, I love data and I love data about The Sims 4. So I asked you guys on Twitter and on Instagram to give me all your info. Not your personal information though, the info about which pack you own, and I did a little research to see which are the most owned packs for The Sims 4. But before jumping into the data, if you want to support this channel and if you want to share this video with everybody as much as possible, don't forget to subscribe and like this video because it really helps the algorithm to share it and push it to everybody. And also if you want to share it on socials, that's very nice. But now let's talk about this data. So I asked everybody to let me know which pack they own and they don't own, and I got 357 people answering. I know it's not the biggest sample number, but I'm very pleased with 357 people that answered. That's very huge for me, and it does still show some clear trends and ups and downs in the number of people that owned each pack. And obviously I will also be posting every bits of information that I'm posting right now for all you data fanatics on my social medias. So Instagram and Twitter, their links are down below. You can follow me there, and I will be posting all this information that I gathered. But of course we're gonna go through them in this video as well, so just stick around. So as I said, we got 357 people answering, and obviously different people have different packs. So we can see that for the expansion packs, 352 people gave me a response. For game packs, 353 people. For stuff packs, 356 people. And for kits, 323 people. That does mean that there is one person that took this test and doesn't own any pack, which is very interesting. They did change a little bit of the information, so every bit counts, because none of the packs will ever reach 100% ownership, because this one person doesn't own every pack. Which does make sense, because not every person owns every pack, especially now that we are in 2024. I think we are just above a year ever since The Sims 4 went free to play. So obviously a lot more people started playing, but not everybody owns packs or wants to buy packs or has the money to buy packs. So there's gonna be people that are only using base game. So this does count. But now we're gonna go through every type of DLC and check the information about them. So we're starting off with expansion packs, of course. And you can see here, we have a list of every expansion pack and the number of people that own them. And then I have a percentage, and that's the amount of people that own it in percentage to the total. We can see that there's clearly a few packs that people own the most. Before moving on to, I'm also pointing it out, Growing Together, Horse Ranch, and For Rent here in this list, but also all the other packs we are going to see later. The packs that were released in 2023 and did not have a full year release, so they have been released less than a year ago, I did put an asterisk next to their name just to make sure that we keep that in mind, that this pack has not been released for a full year, so it still has a little bit of reach to get to. So if we check the graph with every pack and ownership numbers, we can see that more or less expansion packs are pretty balanced. Most people buy every expansion packs, or still most people that I interview buy most of the expansion packs. You can see there's a few little dips, but more or less every expansion pack is above the 300 mark. Now what's interesting about that, we can see obviously Horse Ranch and For Rent, they have way less than 300. I think it makes sense on one hand. Obviously they've been both out for less than a year, but especially for Rent that has such huge bug issues right now, until they fix it, I don't think it's gonna grow much more, because people really are pushing against it, and fairly so. The gameplay is completely messed up. It really breaks the game, so it makes sense that people don't like it or are not buying it yet and waiting for the bugs to be fixed. But what's interesting now, if we put that into consideration, Growing Together, which was also released in 2023, I think it's almost been a year, but it's still not a year as of me recording right now. It is above the 300 mark for people owning it, so it really shows that people really appreciate Growing Together, and I personally really very much agree. I think it's one of the better expansion packs that we have. It's probably the best one that we got in 2023 or in recent years. I really like it. If you enjoy family gameplay, I highly suggest you check out Growing Together. And if we check out the little dip right before it, High School Years has not reached the 300 mark. And I think that also makes sense with people and how people received High School Years. I personally am not the hugest High School Year fan. I don't think it's the best pack ever. There's a few issues here and there. I like the clothing. I think the clothing is very nice. I think the word is alright. I think the build and buy items are nice. But overall, it's not my favorite expansion pack, and I think that most people don't really care for it as much. And you can clearly see there was a little dip in the number of people that owned it. But if we check now the list of every expansion pack from the most owned to the least owned, we can see that the top 3 is so close, and it's City Living, Seasons, and Cats and Dogs. It's very interesting because I really thought Season was gonna be first, but they are very, very close. City Living is at 348, Season 347, and then there was Cats and Dogs, which is also very, very close, and 345. And that makes sense to me. Those 3 packs are all very, very, very well loved, especially I know City Living, a lot of people really love it. Seasons is probably one of the expansion pack that people like talk about the most, and they tell you that you kind of need it because it makes a lot of gameplay with the weather and all of that. And more, it adds a lot of realism. And Cats and Dogs because, you know, pets, and people love the cats and the dogs and the customization for them. So those 3, they're all around the same time. They've been out for a little while. They're in the older packs, but also they're pretty well polished. And I know a lot of people love them. So it makes sense that those are at the top. And if we check the list, we can also see Get Together and Get to Work, which are the 2 oldest expansion packs. That are also up there, 4th and 5th place. So again, the older packs definitely had more time for people to buy them, so it also makes sense for them to be up towards the top. But it doesn't really matter in this list, I don't think, because they're more or less all around the same number. There is a little dip you can see around the Get Famous, Snowy Escape. They're a little lower, but still over 300 people. So overall, the amount of people that owned expansion packs is pretty high. And you can actually see Growing Together is above High School Years, even though it's been out for less time, which is very interesting. So now we're moving on to game packs, and game packs are pretty interesting because we actually haven't had a game pack for a little while. So all these packs should be around the same amount of, the same numbers if we are taking into consideration how people buy expansion packs. But we can clearly see a couple of dips and one pretty major one with Star Wars Journey to Batuu. So obviously, very little people bought Journey to Batuu when it first came out. People really didn't like it when it first came out. I think it gathered a little bit of a cult following later on, but overall people don't like Batuu, and I get it because it doesn't make sense in the game. It feels like a completely different game, and it doesn't vibe with The Sims 4 much. The gameplay is weird, it's different, the world you don't really live in, it's weird, and there's no lots on it. Like, it works in such a different way. It really should have been, in my opinion, a completely different game that was based on The Sims 4, but it should not have been a game pack, because that takes out content that other players could have enjoyed. So it does make sense that we have Journey to Batuu at only 164 with less than 50% ownership, when all the other game pack are all not really, but most around 80% of ownership. And now talking about the good, if we look at this graph and the list at the end, we can see that Parenthood is the most owned pack with 326 people that own it, and it makes sense. Parenthood is great. A lot of people love it. It's well made. It adds great gameplay for families. There's cute clothes, there's cute item. People really talk about it a lot. So it makes sense for people to want to buy it, especially as well newer players. What really surprised me is number 2 being Jungle Adventure at 320. And that made me think, did Jungle Adventure get a free period of time like other packs did recently? Because I know a few packs have been free in the recent times, and I might remember that Jungle Adventure was free for a period of time, or maybe it was bundled with something, because a lot of people buy it. I know it's a great pack. I really enjoyed Jungle Adventure personally, but not many people talk about it, so it's interesting that it's so up there. Overall, I could see it also being up there, because overall I don't think other packs have such a widespread love about them, so I guess it makes sense. But also Dine Out being third, it's kind of weird to me, so I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking it. Obviously, let me know in the comments what you think about this top 3. This is the weirder of the top 3s, I think. What it's really interesting also is Dream Home Decorator being 6th, and that's one of the more recent packs, so it makes sense that it's up there. Good for them. Outdoor Retreat being the first one, it's at 8th place, which is when you're putting it into like consideration that it's been out the longest, and you're taking into consideration that the longest expansion pack that's been out is Get to Work, which is 5th if I'm not mistaken. Being 8th is not the greatest thing, but also I know Outdoor Retreat is not the greatest pack by far, so it makes sense. Well, I'm really upset about Strangerville being 9th though, because I love Strangerville. Great pack, buy it, please buy it, because it's amazing. I know the story it's a little weird because you're not really expecting a story element, but the word is great. The build-a-buy items are beautiful. The word is beautiful. The create-a-sim items are great. Just buy Strangerville. I really like Strangerville. Another little dip that you can see is My Wedding Stories at 155. It makes sense because my Wedding Stories almost really honestly killed game packs for me. It really is so buggy. It still is buggy, but it really completely ruined weddings forever. So it really is an issue, and I hope they're fixing it soon, because it still has issues, and it's been more than a year since it's been out, guys. Please. And obviously we have Werewolves, which is towards the bottom of the list as well. I really like Werewolf, but I understand that not a lot of people are into occults. I highly suggest it though if you are interested at all, because it's a very good pack, well made. There is a really nice story element behind it that is not as present as the Strangerville story is, but it's still there, and it adds a lot of lore that I really like. Now we're moving on to stuff packs, and this is gonna be so interesting to talk about, because the top 3 in this list really gagged me forever. Like, I was shook for a couple minutes, and then I remember one thing, and we're gonna talk about that. So I'm just skipping over all the other information. Let's move on to the top 3. My First Pet Stuff, Romantic Garden, and Laundry Day. So that's the interesting top 3 that I was talking about a second ago. My First Pet Stuff being first really threw me for a loop, especially, and then Romantic Garden as well. And when I said Romantic Garden is second to myself, I thought back for a second, and I realized that both My First Pet Stuff and Romantic Garden had been free for a period of time in 2023, and people downloaded them for free, and they got them for free, so that's why they're at the top of the list. So technically speaking, yes, most people own My First Pet Stuff and Romantic Garden, even though I know they're not, either of them is well loved. I think overall Romantic Garden is pretty decent. It's not the greatest stuff pack ever, but there's a few cute items. It's a little too stylized, so you cannot really use it everywhere. But overall, I don't think people really disliked Romantic Garden. I know people hated My First Pet Stuff. People still hate My First Pet Stuff. So it's very interesting that it's at number 1 in this list. But it does make sense. If it was free, it was the perfect time to get a pack that usually you probably wouldn't really buy, because not many people really recommend it. Overall, if you get it for free, it's a great pack to get for free. Buying it, I don't really care for it as much. But clearly putting it out for free really bumped it up. And same goes for Romantic Garden, it really got a big bump, because I really thought Laundry Day was gonna be first. Or Tiny Living, which is right after Laundry Day, just outside the top 3. But also, it's interesting to see that Laundry Day and Nifty Dating, which are the 2 packs that were built with the community, asking the community for feedback and everything, those 2 are both in the top 5, so people really enjoyed them. So Sims team, please keep doing that, because people really like when you ask us. And we can also see Paranormal is at number 8. I personally really like Paranormal. It was the last stuff pack for a while, so I don't know why it's decently low overall. I mean, it's middle of the way, so it's not too bad. I really like, I think it's a great stuff pack to get. And if you're into any kind of like spooky, not really spooky stuff, I think it's great. And if you go towards the bottom, we have Omshafaso. Obviously, that was released in 2023, so it doesn't have as much time to be bought for everybody. We see Perfect Patio is right above it, with just a few people owning it more than that. And Perfect Patio is not my favorite pack at all. I think spooky stuff also is down there, which is not, again, very great. Fitness stuff, again, down there. I think fitness stuff is a little better. Final category is probably the most interesting and the most important, is the kits. So kits were first released in 2021. There's gonna be a lot of ups and downs in these ones, and you're gonna see here in the graph, you can clearly see ups and downs, huge ups and downs. Especially, you can see a big, huge up here for Desert Lux. So Desert Lux was given out for free for people that owned The Sims 4 before it went free to play. So if you bought the game, you had a little thing to thank you for buying it before it went free to play. And that was Desert Lux. So a lot of people got it for free for that reason. So that's the reason why it actually is the most owned kit. And I do think that does like make sense again, as it happened for stuff packs. The packs that were made free are the one that most people own. Also, before moving on to the kits and going into a little bit more in depth, take into consideration that there are kits that have been released in 2023 and those have the asterisks next to them. But when there has two asterisks, there are two of them. Those two have been released in 2024, so like last month as of me recording. So those have a little, even less time to be bought. So if we check the full list and take a look at the amount of people that own it and the percentage, obviously we have the 73% for Desert Lux, but overall we are around the 50% mark. Some are above, some are below, but that's more or less the amount of people that own kits. And if we check the full list, we can see Desert Lux is obviously at the top with a huge margin as well, more than 50 people own it than Blooming Rooms, which is second at 207, and then we have Little Campers at third, 204. And I think Blooming Rooms and Little Campers, I did kind of expect those to be towards the top. Blooming Rooms is not my personal favorite, just because I don't think it was a great theme per se, doing plants. I do love plants, and I do love plants in The Sims 4, and I think there are some great plants in that kit, but since it's such a huge, vague, like not really precise or niche thing, it couldn't really have a specific style, which is my issue, because I think kits are supposed to be specific style niche things that are usually not in game otherwise. Little Campers I really enjoyed. There's also some nice gameplay elements in them, so it's a great middle of the road, especially when you take into consideration Bust the Dust, which is not the greatest pack. Book Nook is a number 6, and that's interesting because, as you know, you can see that there is an asterisk, and that means Book Nook actually came out in 2023, so it had less than a year, and it's already top 10. And the same goes for Modern Lux, again top 10, even though it was released last year. Now, if we move towards the bottom of this list, we can see that we have the Goth Galore is the last place, but also it's just been released. Same goes for the Castle Estate, which I really thought was going to be second to last because of the fact that it was just released, but it's actually above another kit, which is the Modern Menswear kit. So I did make a whole video talking about the Modern Menswear kit on my channel. I'm gonna link it somewhere, but yeah, it really came out at the wrong time, and it really didn't deliver what people really wanted. I personally don't think it's a bad kit per se, but it definitely had some issues, and it came out at the worst time it could have come out. So that's why it's so towards the bottom, and probably Goth Galore kit is gonna surpass it in sales. They're even right now, and the Goth Galore kit just came out. So since kits come in, I guess, 3 different types, but Bust the Dust is the only gameplay kit that we have, I decided to split them in a list with all the build and buy kits and a list with all the create a sim kits, and here is the list. We can see the first one is the build and buy. We have Desert Lux obviously at the top, and then we have Blooming Rooms, Little Campers, you know, our top 3, and then all the other packs. And then next to that we have Ancient Arrivals for the top for the Create a Sims one, and Fashion Street, and then the Grad Revival. I this really shows me some interesting information. First thing first, if we take into consideration the amount of people that bought each pack and the percentage of people that own them, we can clearly see that kits that are focused on build and buy are usually most people buy them, or just generally well received. Most of the kits that are in the build and buy list, they have been bought by more than 50 or at least 50% of people. The only two that I haven't gotten to 50% ownership as the Castle Estate, which just came out, and the Basement Treasure, which was released last year, and it's honestly very, very close to getting to 50%. So if we take out the Castle Estate and we take into consideration Basement Treasure with 172 people owning it, 48%, Ancient Arrivals with 168 people owning it, which is the most owned for the Creative Sims kits, is only 47%, so it's less than that. So it really shows me that people much more prefer to buy the build and buy kits rather than the Creative Sims kits. Personally, I am on that side because I do prefer building more, just because the Sims 4 is really a great game for building, and it really is easy to understand. It's easy to build and make beautiful houses without too much effort, so it does tend to itself to, you know, usability for building much more. But obviously Creative Sims is also very easy to use, and it's interesting to see that there is this big difference, because most of the build and buy kits are above 50% ownership. Most of the Creative Sims kits are 40% ownership, with the Modern Menswear and the Golf Galore being a 30% ownership, especially Modern Menswear, which has been out for a while at this point. So overall, you can also see that probably the Sims team did take that into consideration, because at first we used to get a build and buy kit and a Creative Sims kit together, released at the same time, and that happens sometimes still, but not as much. But you can see there's 4 more build and buy kits rather than Creative Sims kits. Is that because they realized that build and buy kits do better? Probably. So this was the data that I gathered. Obviously, as I said at the beginning of the video, if you want to check everything out, I will be posting it on my socials, so you can check that out. You can look at all the lists. Obviously, if you want to use the list for your own videos or making builds or whatever, let me know. I'd love to check them out. Just give me credit that I made the list, and that's it. You can use them as much as you want. But thank you so much for watching this video. I'm very happy that I was able to make this one because I love data. I love like looking at all these numbers. I just really like that. So I'm very happy that I was able to make this one. We'll see each other in the next video. Thank you so much for watching, and bye bye.